All right, very happy to have with us today the world-renowned acoustic bassist and electric bassist Michael Feinberg. If you don't know who Michael is, please learn more about him by visiting his website, mfbass.com. And Michael has toured the world as a band leader. He's played with countless musicians, people from Jeff Tain Watts to George Garzone and everyone in between. He's got a ton of records out. So thanks for coming, Michael.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Good, good. Michael and we met at NYU a long time ago when we were, you know,
Children.
yeah, when we were children, basically. We had a lot of different teachers and stuff. The first thing I wanted to ask you to start this conversation is, we receive all this different advice from musicians, people we play with who are maybe a little older. What's something someone told you, maybe a piece of advice, or this is a rule early on that you've chosen to just completely ignore, or make your own, redefine? What do you think that would be?
It's a great question. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation that we are fed throughout our life as music students, as students of any subject. And I think the most important, I don't have a specific person or lesson, but generally, I think that the way that we learn music is kind of backwards. So the things that were really impressed on me in the beginning of my musical education were like learning how to read, music theory, the kind of more academic side of music. And later on, I found that the best way, I think, to teach and to learn music is a much more holistic way. Just learning by ear, not necessarily transcribing, but listening and applying what you listen in your playing. It doesn't matter what finger is on which fret. It doesn't matter that you call it Phrygian. It doesn't matter that a lot, there are tools that you need. Learning how to read music is an important tool. It's not the thing that makes music happen. So that's the direction that I would take all of my students from the lessons I learned that I felt like impeded my growth, is to start with those aspects of music that are built into the actual playing and listening to music, instead of like the building blocks of what music is and how to put it together and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the education system isn't going away, anytime soon. People are going to go to college, and study music. We're programmed that we have to go get a bachelor's degree. So like, I've always thought that, the classes aren't going to change, but they are going to change. They'll take some out ads. I always thought one cool thing would have been if a class requirement is you have to go hear live jazz, live music. You have to go see it happening. But they're not say, people say like, oh, you got to go check it out. But if it's required, then people would have to go. What do you think that's not there in the music education? If you could add your own, class for when it comes to jazz or just even music, what are you going to add that's not there, you think?
I think it's an entire approach. I don't think it really has the system of jazz education has very little to do with the creation of what jazz music is about. It's very different than the study of classical music, and it's very different than the study of ethnomusicology or music therapy or all these other things you can study in college now. Jazz is it's a tradition. It's not a subject in school, right? It's something that really has its birthplace in the blues and in storytelling. And those aren't really concepts that anyone has been able to codify into a course. I love to ask my students, what is the blues? What does the blues mean? I made my last record blues variant to kind of tackle some of those questions. I think that trying to understand the blues, trying to understand traditional jazz, the music of New Orleans of the turn of the century, the 20s, the 30s, and then this is like folk music. That's music that was made by regular people. These weren't people who went to school. Louis Armstrong didn't go to school, you know. Um, his school was the trumpet itself. It was hanging out with you know, King Oliver and whoever the older guys were. That's where this music comes from. That's the tradition of blues and jazz music, and that was how all the greats that we aspire to be like learned this music.
Yeah, so you're saying that, the way it's taught is completely backwards. And I would say I definitely agree with some of that. And the holistic, approach you're talking about, the oral tradition is something that you bring to your playing. When, you've played with so many musicians, and, as a band leader and a sideman, what do you think that, you know, what do you think, is there any particular things you think people notice about your playing when they're playing with you? Or, oh, Michael, he's got this certain thing. What do you, if you could put that into words, what would it be?
I think the thing that I offer that makes me unique as a player is one that I have a fearlessness in what I'm willing to do on the bandstand. I'm not afraid of taking risks and trying new things, and I seek that out. And I think that especially for musicians who have been playing with the same people for a long time, or they've been playing in certain styles or situations, they don't have the freedom to go to as many different places.
Do you try to take a risk, like every time you're on a gig, you would say, like, is it something that's conscious? Like, I need to do something different on this gig every gig.
I don't know if it's conscious or subconscious. Sometimes you have ideas that you're trying, but I think about, Ron Carter's approach, for instance. If you study Ron Carter or listen to what he's got to say about playing the bass, a lot of his approach deals with finding new and creative ways to manipulate the song. And the bass has a lot of control over that, whether it's tacit laying out, whether it's playing in a two feel, whether it's playing over the bar, whether it's playing walking 4 beats per bar. Whatever the bass does completely changes the momentum and propulsion of the music. And that's rhythmically and harmonically. We're the only instrument that really can do that. We can't, like, one change of the bass note completely changes how everyone feels and hears the chord. One change of the rhythm out of the bass completely changes how we feel the groove. And those are the two most important parts of music.
Yeah, I
Really,
mean,
rhythm and harmony. The melody is the melody. Melody's great, melody's great, but the harmony is what gives the context of what the song is really about.
you talk about, any note can change, you know, the emotion you're saying, and just change the overall sound. Is there any particular time where, you notice something you did on a gig, even if it could have even been a mistake, like, but that, is there any, are there any mistakes or risks that you've taken that turned out to be, oh, this is like going
Great.
where I want it to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you one specific example. I did a record in oh, it's on Blues Variant. So this was my one of my last records that came out.
All blues tunes.
Yeah, and I did an arrangement of a Herbie Hancock tune called Eye of the Hurricane. And my arrangement has a metric modulation when we get to the first solo, meaning that we change where the feeling of the pulse of the song is. So when that moment happened, the drummer made a mistake and ended up just dropping out. So it was just left with me and the soloist, which was Dave Liebman, playing duo. So we went from the whole band, 5 people all playing, to all of a sudden it just became the two of us. And it was a really special magic moment that happened out of a mistake, but it became something that I think really was the kind of best part of that.
That would say that's your number one, probably, right?
It's the first one that comes to mind, but you fail 95% of the time, and you hope that the 5% that succeeds is really, really special.
And you mentioned Dave Lieben. You're lucky. You get a get a chance to play with him and stuff. I mean, if in another 40 years, 50 years, people are going to be saying, I got a chance to play with Michael Feinberg or go hear Michael Feinberg.
Yeah,
You know,
hopefully in 4 or 5 years, not 40.
no, when I'm talking about when you're an older, when you're a master,
Yeah,
before you
getting there,
transition.
working on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But like, let's say you can go, you can time travel to any place, any time, any club, and play with any band. You bring it like whoever you want it to be. Where are you going? Who are you playing with? What are you playing? Anything come to mind?
Ugh. Yeah. So, the first thing that always comes to mind with this question is that I would just love to be a part of the John Coltrane Quartet. But then, you think about the fact that I would probably ruin it because, like,
Yeah.
you needed each one of those guys to make it so special. You need Jimmy Garrison to be there. As much as I love that music and really would feel like I could embrace the spirit and bring out things with that band. I'm not sure that it might ruin that music for me, and for other people because it's
Well, it'll be
just so
different, like
perfect.
Reggie Workman played too.
Yeah, maybe I could
It's
I
just
could I could
different.
replace Reggie Workman on
Yeah.
like some of the double bass stuff.
And they played some great clubs, and you've played some great clubs all over the world. What's a famous club, that you would say has a, you know, underserved reputation, good or bad?
Yeah, I'll give you one example of both because you know, have strong feelings about clubs.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah,
I gotta say that for
let
the
it
most
loose.
part, clubs provide a very bad experience for both the audience and for the performer, which is really unfortunate. But they're a business and they have a specific type of business model with very thin margins, and there's a certain type of um, idea and attitude about how one could maximize the financial gains of running a jazz club, which is very difficult. So a lot of times you're squeezed into, let's say, the Blue Note, New York City. It's one of the least comfortable rooms you can imagine being in when it's sold out, when it's packed.
to
You
put
know,
to play or to
to,
see a
to,
concert.
to play it's uncomfortable, and to be an audience it's uncomfortable, and there's nothing special about it. There's no feeling you get from being in there. It just it doesn't, for the name and for all the greats who have graced that room and that stage, you know it's just this kind of crappy room on West 4th Street, that crams people into the corner so you can't see and you're uncomfortable and you're stumbling over people. And, this is like a common problem.
Well, yeah,
And
some
a
clubs are.
patron is, go ahead.
Yeah, some clubs, they can feel a little claustrophobic. I will say that.
Yeah. There's an example of a great new club that just opened up in Orlando called Judson's, which is in the Dr. Phillips Performing Arts Center. And they're doing everything right. They have really thought a lot about the experience and giving you as an audience member and you as a musician the best possible experience you can have to create and the best experience you can have to take in the music. And there are lots of great venues and there's lots of difficult rooms, but really, I think for me, the audience is the thing that makes it a good or bad experience. But it's nice to be treated well. It's nice for the audience to be comfortable. It's nice for everyone to be provided with the right kind of energy in the space that we can, as the band, give the audience, our best performance.
Overall, a good experience for everybody. And you do so many gigs. I'm also kind of curious. Um, any superstitions about performing? Any pre-performance rituals or things that must take place or hopefully can take place?
No, you do enough of these things and you're running from the airport to the sound check because the flight got in late, or, you're at the venue for 4 hours because you had a sound check at 4 o'clock and the gig is at 9, or, there's just every situation is its own. So the thing that I like to do is just to try and be as relaxed as possible before I play. Hang out with the band, have a drink, like, just trying to keep the energy positive and mellow. and just relaxed.
Yeah, that'll bring out the best music overall if you're, you
Yeah,
know,
you don't got to get too
relaxed.
hyped up. People know when they get on stage, it's time to go. And everyone that you're with, they have their own neuroses or their own things that they like to do. Tane will always be warming up. He's always warming up. He's playing, he sticks in his hand the whole time. And then like Noah Preminger, he'll never practice anything. But everyone has their own thing,
Yeah.
and it's because once
We're
we get on the
talking
band, once we get on the stage, we're doing the thing.
we're talking a lot about, jazz and music, but I want to get into there. We're influenced by so many things, like, um, let's, what do you, what's, well, let me ask you this. What non-jazz musician would inspire you the most?
Long list. There's a lot of music that I love that's not considered jazz. Um, so, I love a lot of classical music. I love a lot of contemporary on like chamber music. Stevie Wonder, one of my favorite artists ever. Whew, yeah, I mean, I grew up on hip hop and radio, rock and pop, so there's a lot of great music, and classic rock. There's music is music.
What influences you in life, aside from music that you take to your writing or to your playing? Like, I mean, I'll give you a quick example. Like for me, even if it's I'm at a gig and I wanted to do this gig originally, like um I don't want to be there for whatever reason, but I have to find the inspiration in something. And overall, it's just, the feeling of like I'm being alive, and I'm here and I'm just going to enjoy this moment. And then the beginning is always right after this. So anything philosophical you might take to, inspire you, whether composing or playing.
Yeah, I like the idea of just trying to be in the moment. That's the goal, I think, for all of us. That's why we work so hard in the practice room so that we can be free and present. And our egos are usually the things that get in the way of that, because we've worked
Well,
out all this stuff that we want to do.
yeah. Well,
So, yeah.
well, what's the most random, place you found inspiration from, whether, an object or a place? What's the
Um, hmm. That's an interesting question because there's a lot of inspiration. Traveling brings a lot of inspiration. Um, but I think like really when I'm performing music is kind of my escape from everything else. So it doesn't really require for me to find anything else. That's where I go to get off of everything else.
the music is the escape?
Yeah, I would say I always say that I don't music is my religion. That's my church is playing music. That's the thing where it takes me to um a state of mind where I'm not worried about my week and I'm not thinking about the bills and I'm not, all the minutia of the day-to-day stuff, it kind of goes away. So I don't need to find inspiration. That is my inspiration, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, are there certain things like, concepts or techniques you're working on now that, or maybe worked on that are super hard to master, but you now love to do them? Or what are you working on, or anything?
Yeah. So at this point, in this exact moment, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break from practicing. I was really going very, very hard through the pandemic in the last couple of years. And the rest of this year, I'm just trying to kind of take it a little bit easy on my body and my mind and to kind of get a little refreshed to go into next year. But I've been really practicing a lot of classical music on the bass and digging into the traditional repertoire and a lot of the new solo material that's available now. There's a really incredible community of double bass players right now that are taking the instrument to levels that it's never been seen before.
And who deserves credit aside from, yourself?
I wouldn't consider myself on that list.
Who deserves credit that's not getting it?
There's Well, I think that a lot of them are getting the credit. It's just, that this is in a very specific world of classical music. You know, there are some, there's the first guy who comes to mind, Xavier Foley, who's a very young
Xavier?
Xavier, Xavier Foley, Foley. Check him out online. He is a student of Edgar Meyer, who's one of the great double bass players. I mean, really, probably of the living bass players today, one of the 4 or 5 most important in terms of his students and the body of work he's put out. And, Xavier wrote a bunch of music for himself, etudes that have become now very popular in the double bass community, that are just these beautiful lyrical and technical pieces. So there's a lot of people like him out there right now who are exploring the double bass in ways that have not been played before in all of history. So I'm trying to bring some of those techniques to my playing. You can hear a little bit on some of my albums, like my 2023 release, Crystallize. I did a couple tracks by a Japanese composer, Ryuichi Sakamoto, and I play a lot of double arco melodies on it. So
Yeah,
you'll hear bring some of
you've
those techniques.
you've done so much. I mean, in all different instrumentations, you know, and with different musicians, different compositions, original tunes, and standards, right? You're talking, if this is kind of a crazy question, but I actually think it's a valid one if you really want to get to know somebody. Let's say a psychologist could analyze your music. What do you think they would say about you as a person?
Mm, let's see. That's I yuck. Oh gosh, that's tough. I think that they would see someone who has a very authentic um, desire to find deeper meanings in life and hasn't quite figured out what direction that is yet, is looking in all different kinds of places for whatever these answers that life, the questions of life.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, in that too, emotion can be hard to convey in jazz sometimes because we're playing instrumental music. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily, but playing instrumental music is definitely a different challenge than playing music with lyrics for a listener. But, bad on the listener. Be a better listener.
Yeah, no, I also want to ask you too. I mean, because we're talking about, there are so many standards out there, and there is that quote, you hear, you have to learn this tune, you have to learn this tune. What's a famous tune that you have, let's say, I don't want to say disdain for, but an unpopular opinion about? For
Well,
me, like I don't really, I don't like
I want to tie that back to one of the previous questions about how we learn jazz and advice people give you when you're young.
sure.
And the days of needing to know 500 tunes are long gone. There are very few people that I see in professional situations who are accessing that kind of material like that because of, fake books and real books and stuff like that. So, that was something that I feel like was a lot more important 15 or 20 years ago than it is today. And even with some of the most esteemed professional musicians and guys I really admire and look up to, they kind of play the same handful of tunes all the time. They have their few that they really like to play, and they kind of stick to those ones. And that's fine and that's cool. And I think that really mastering 20 or 30 tunes, mastering like upside, inside, outside, every which way you can play it, is probably all you really need. And then your ears should be good enough to dictate the music that you play. So there's a lot of gigs I'll be playing with you. Let's say you'll call a tune, we haven't played it in a while, and it just takes me maybe a chorus or two to get all the bits and pieces kind of lodged back in. But my ear is good enough now that I can tell, oh, the bridge goes to 4, or the bridge goes to 3, or the bridge goes to 6, or you kind of learn the tricks of the trade in that way.
Yeah, you have a really good ear too. Like I'll tell you a little fact about Michael. So like I didn't want to we were playing this tune, and I just told him, I'm like, yeah, just play on A minor 7. And I started playing the melody, and he was like, that's not the tune. You know, he's like, those aren't the chords. Because I didn't want to get into a whole, okay,
Yeah.
it's 2 bars. I just started, I'm like, and he has a really good ear, and he heard that. What's a tune that you just,
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I used to have a lot more, and I really changed my attitude about it. Because what I realize is that if the tune is hip enough for Louis Armstrong or Miles Davis or whoever I love to play it and sound great on it, then it's hip enough for me. So I kind of stopped getting too worked up about that stuff. But man, I got really sick of playing I'll Remember April for there's about 10-year period where I just nope, not gonna play it.
yeah.
Play
You
something
see,
else.
everyone's different. That's a song I probably don't ever get sick of. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't get sick of eating the same food every day. So,
Well, it's there. Like I said, it's something that for me, I had to look at myself and understand, like, wait a minute, it's not the song's fault. You're not playing it well. Like if you really could play, you'd make it sound good. So that's kind of something that I think you have to reckon with, um, as a jazz musician in particular, because we have so much material where we need to know.
Did you ever have any moments where, I mean, you've been in the game now for your whole adult life. Did you ever have any moments where you're like, oh, I can't do this. Like I want to, or I should have done something different. I've had a couple of moments like that.
I don't know if it's about doing something different, but I would say being an artist is a very, very challenging endeavor.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that when I got into it. But I think like there's not a choice. It's kind of who we are. Unfortunately, we have to find a way to pay bills and eat and take care of our families and all the other things of life. Not so easy doing that as a performer, as a
Yeah.
musician, you know?
Yeah. I thought about being a chiropractor for about 24 hours. That was like,
Yeah. Well, I had a great one of my mentors and a great teacher, Chuck Bergeron. He used to always tell me like anyone can be a lawyer. You just got to read a few books and pass the test. You don't have to be special. Anyone can get a job like that, with a little bit of, gumption and a little bit of smarts. You're not special, to be a real estate agent, to be a lawyer, to be a whatever. You get a certification and you have a job. But to be an artist, to be a musician, it requires a lot more that, it's, I don't know if talent is the right word because I don't necessarily believe in like talent. I think that it's a lot of hard work, but you have to have a sort of passion, drive, and dedication that's a lot deeper than the desire to just have a career, be rich, be famous, all the things you think about, when you're a kid and what you want to do when you grow up and how you see yourself.
yeah, I mean, people always say musicians were such deep thinkers and, what's it called? We're sensitive, some people say, and we're so deep as artists and musicians. I heard Woody Allen say, he was like, we're all going to die despite this terrible fact. What makes you want to go on living? And it's making the art and stuff. I mean, is it something like that, or do you think about it in a different way? I'm just curious, what makes us so deep?
I don't think that it's anything that makes us deep. I think that artists, whether that's musician, painter, chef, anything that's creative, I think that if you are someone who's open-minded, someone who seeks to learn, um, someone who has an outwardly, a viewpoint that is trying to take in the outer world, not just the inner world. These are the qualities that I think makes great artists. Some great artists made from pure introspection, but a lot of the stuff that speaks to me are the big world things that are summarized down into one painting.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a piece of art or you hear a piece of music and it makes you feel something that you don't understand, whether you like it or dislike it, whether it challenges your beliefs or, It can be good or bad, but those are experiences that I seek as, a human.
Yeah,
Those are, I don't always look just for the comfort. And I think that that's something that artists are all, I think they all share that, is that we don't live in comfort. We live in more of the chaos. We try and synthesize that to find our own comfort. So by people who are interested in things bigger than themselves, that could be religion, that could be culturally, and whatever you want. Those tend to be people who are more sensitive to other people, more empathetic to other people. They have more experience dealing with other people. You know that music is a language of its own. So when you can communicate through music, it crosses all barriers with age, gender, nationality, ethnicity. So I think people who become artists or musicians, they have these type of tendencies. I'm not sure that they're all so, esoteric and sensitive, whatever, but they have a genuine interest in things that are outside of themselves.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And this podcast is just getting started, but thank you for doing it. And I'm sure we'll do it again and talk about more, because we have a lot to say, right?
There's always more to
There's
say,
always more to say.
and I really appreciate being here. I think this is going to be a incredible podcast. I'm happy to go down the rabbit hole, and until next time, we'll do it again.
Well, hopefully we are going down the rabbit hole.
I think we went a little. We started. We
Good.
started. We're
That's
getting
the
there.
idea. All
Yeah.
right. I'll sign off, and then we'll have a proper goodbye.
Okay. Do you want to do any more questions? I can just close my Zoom and we can reopen it, or was that enough time?
Yeah, I think that'll be enough time to start
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, I only have like the 40-minute thing. I don't have the paid
Yeah, I'm
Zoom.
still getting I'm still getting warmed up. You know what I mean? Like this is
It was good. I thought it
yeah.
was good.
All right. Well,
Okay.
I'll keep this in there. This is going to be in the video. This is the real life stuff that we're just talking
Okay.
about. All right. Let me just do this.